come up with a new, like a sophisticated way to just draw, here's what we do, and here's how it affects numbers and dollars. And that's what I've attempted to do at Success Coaching. And so that's what I'll walk you through here. I can take you through some real data from our actual CRM. I'll take you through a strategy of how we recognize revenue, the concept of a profitability health level, or PHL, and the concept of 5 different revenue streams. And every business has these 5, and we have an effect on the majority of those revenue streams. Now, what effect is very different depending on the type of revenue we're talking about. But for years, we've talked about customer acquisition costs, or CAC, right? And trying to make sure that your average lifetime value is greater than your average customer acquisition cost. Because if it's not, you're losing money. It's costing you more to acquire customers than you are actually earning from them over time.
Hey, Aaron, I have a quick question on CAC there. For those in the audience who maybe are less familiar with it, how do you measure customer acquisition costs right now?
100%. Let me just jump to some slides and I can show you not only how we calculate it, but what the industry standard is for how you calculate customer acquisition cost. So here we go. I think I can do this and then this, and I can see. All right. You can see that okay, Gemma?
Yeah. Awesome. 4 points. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to just kind of pick and choose some stuff of what I did over in London a couple of weeks ago and pull some slides out. This might be a little clunky as I bounce around, so just bear with me. But first question is, what is customer acquisition cost and how do you calculate CAC? And it's a long time used business metric. This is not anything new. This has been around. It became very prevalent when we moved from the product era, selling physical products, and moved into the service era with a subscription pricing model. When we get a little bit of money over time, like we do in this service era that we now live in, which is where most SaaS companies reside, software as a service, then it's a different economics. We need to make sure that we are offsetting the acquisition cost. In the product era, as long as you priced it accordingly, when you got that point of sale, you basically overcame your acquisition cost if you had your pricing right. But that's because you got a whole bunch of money up front. Now we get a little bit of money over time with this subscription economy we live in. And so it's become more and more prevalent and more important to really track accurately. But it isn't new in its own right. The typical formula looks like that, where you've got your total marketing spend, and this includes outbound, inbound, pay-per-click, SEO, blog posts, advertising, billboards, funny looking logos that have donkeys and plungers, whatever you do so people know you exist, right? That's your marketing spend, as well as your overhead expense of your marketing team, any advertising expenses, anything in Google, all of that goes into that marketing piece. And then you've got your sales spend. Turns out sales is not free. It costs money to acquire customers, sell customers, take them through your sales funnel. So this could be a very high touch, whining and dining and flying around the country and doing kind of that typical old school sales, or it could even be in the product with a free trial option. That has an expense to your customer, to your company. If nothing more, just for the technology, but you're going to have probably some training involved, some kind of overhead that's going to help them be successful in knowing how to use the product during the free trial so that they then convert into a paying customer. But what you do is you just simply sum those two up and then divide them by the total number of new customers that you achieved in whatever period of time frame that you would like. So basically, it's everything at the top of the funnel. Pre-sales, front of the house, whatever you want to call it, otherwise known as that right there. So here's a typical kind of land and expand sales funnel. This was one that I developed at a company years ago that I founded called RevDev, not to be confused with DevRev, which is a whole new company here, but I digress. So in the red there, you've got demand generation and awareness. There's your marketing team. In the green, you've got evaluation and decision. There's your sales team. So you're doing all this one-to-many at the top. It's incredibly expensive to acquire net new customers that way. But this is how we've always done it. MQLs converting into SQLs, converting into customers. And in the product era, that's kind of all we really needed to focus on in terms of overhead expense. And that's where the customer acquisition came from. And why this matters is because when we compare it to your lifetime value, it will outline whether we were actually profitable on that customer or not. I call it the profitability health level, or PHL. And a common ratio to be healthy in your revenue for any given customer is 3-to-1 of CLTV to CAC. In other words, I need to have 3 times the average customer lifetime value to my average customer acquisition cost in order to break even, to even be profitable on that customer. The first question I had on that was, why is it 3? It seems like it should be 1-to-1 to me, right? If it costs me $1 to acquire a customer and I earn $1 on that customer, we should break even. That should be the goal. And then 2-to-1 would be profitable. Well, that's because we have all that darn stuff there at the bottom of the funnel. So typically what we do, you can think of it as activate, optimize, renew. That's really what customer success comes down to. Get me onboarded as frictionlessly as possible, low time to value, etc. And then get me optimized to where I'm realizing some value and I'm moving towards this kind of optimal state. And then when we do all of this effectively, that'll lead to renewal. And with that onboarding effort, with the training, the implementation, configuration, integration, I like to say all the Asians, right? We do all the Asians to get you set up and running. That has overhead to our company as well. And thus, that's why for it to be a healthy PHL, it really needs to be 3-to-1. And you can go Google all that stuff. This isn't my stuff. That's just common known kind of SaaS business metrics, and check it out. It's all out there in the Google machine. Now, where my concept of revenue acquisition cost comes in is to take it another level than customer acquisition cost, because you don't have just one type of revenue within a given customer account. Not all dollars are created equal. And as customers come on as net new and then renew and then expand, those all have different overhead expenses to your business. And so what we want to do is exactly that. Recognize that these are not all created equal, that each has its own acquisition cost, and that within any given account, they're going to have numerous types. So for us to truly track what is profitable, what is the health level of our revenue, of our profitability, in other words, to completely understand the PHL for any given account or customer, we've got to track what types they have and then attribute the appropriate acquisition cost to each type. So then the next question is, what kinds of revenue are there? I alluded to 5 of those a minute ago. So the first type, net new revenue. So what is net new revenue? I think we've got a pretty good idea, but if I take it back to this kind of North Star here, you've got your marketing doing the MQLs, you got your sales there doing your SQLs, and then eventually they decide, or some of them decide, to become a customer. And obviously when they move from the top of the funnel to the bottom, that's your net new revenue. Now, we need to have multiple renewals, typically speaking, in order to be profitable on that customer, because just getting from the top to the bottom hasn't offset all of the overhead, right? That's where that 3-to-1 comes into play. So just having a customer sign as a net new deal doesn't mean we've actually even made any money on that customer yet. Typically, we have to renew them 2 times in order to break even with all of the overhead, because it's so expensive at the top of that funnel. I have to do so much demand generation to gain any awareness. And then of the people who are aware of me, some will want to evaluate us against what they're looking to solve in our competition, etc. And of them, some will decide to become a customer. So it's this huge diminishing return at the top of that funnel. But in the product era, that was fine, because we would calculate what all that meant. We would price the product accordingly. We would sell it one time. They would own it in perpetuity. And as long as we had our numbers right, we got that 90% of the lifetime value at that point of sale, and away we go. Now we can just kind of be customer support. Hopefully it works, it doesn't wear out, etc. And there's a lot more to that, but I'm oversimplifying kind of what that looks like just for the sake of keeping this moving. Now in the subscription though, economy though, that's not how it works, right? Net new is really just the starting line of our ability to acquire revenue. Now all of the following revenue is going to have different acquisition costs accordingly. So my super scientific definition, I got a little chicken brain, and I got to break stuff down to be like layman's terms, like, as simple as possible for me to understand it. So my super scientific definition is the first time this person bought this thing. So it's about the person. It's not about the account. Accounts don't buy things. Logos don't buy things. Humans do. And so we're selling to humans, we're servicing for humans. Those humans are deciding to either purchase initially, renew, expand, advocate, all these different things that we're about to talk about. That's all about the people involved. And it's the first time they bought this thing. Okay. Huge one-to-many game, top of the funnel, like I talked about. And from a revenue acquisition cost, this is the most expensive revenue we will ever acquire. Because of that one-to-many, it is incredibly expensive to acquire customers that way. In fact, most organizations spend 40% of their available capital at the top of that funnel. So if I've got $1 million in the bank, 400,000 of it's going to just generate new MQLs and SQLs because it's just such an inefficient way to go. But you got to do it, because if people don't know you exist, they'll never decide to buy your thing. And if you don't buy your thing, you're never going to have more customers and you can't grow, etc. But it's the least efficient and most expensive revenue acquisition cost that exists. Okay, that's number one. Number two, renewal revenue. Pretty straightforward. So once we've now brought them from the top of the funnel to the bottom and we get to the end of their contract, since we did not sell them a physical product, but rather we sold it to them as a service, we've got the renewal conversation. And obviously that lives right there. And if we do customer success effectively, renewal should become a natural byproduct of their life cycle. In other words, if I'm getting what I need in terms of business goals, outcomes, etc., and I'm getting it how I want it in terms of desired experience, and I know it, that's the other key, I will renew. Now, if I didn't get it, then I might not. Or if I don't know it, then I might not. The whole thing, I don't have it in slides, but the whole thing comes down to these 3 Ds, right? We're going to define what success is for you as my customer. And I do that by way of desired outcome plus desired experience. I'll come back to that in a second. I'm then going to deliver that to you and make sure that I'm helping you achieve what you want in terms of ROI or time savings or whatever it is. And I'm doing it how you want it. I'm fitting into your work style, your lifestyle, and making it frictionless, etc. And then I just need to demonstrate so that you have no shadow of a doubt the value that you're getting. You do all that effectively, renewal becomes natural. I'm going to stick around if I'm getting all of that and I know it. Where most companies fail is not defining. Most companies do that. Most companies deliver it. They do a good job of actually helping them achieve it. Most companies do not demonstrate it effectively enough. So we've been doing it, but the customer just doesn't know it. We haven't made it so stupidly obvious to them, the value that they receive, so that when it comes to renewal time, they go back up and they start reevaluating you on that top of the funnel, which they shouldn't have to do because they didn't buy a physical product. It's not going to break. It's not going to wear out. It's not going to force them back into the market like in the product era it would have. In the service era, once we get them, if we do this correctly, we should be able to keep them in perpetuity. Now, if we don't, it's probably because we missed one of these 3 Ds. Okay, and so when we do all of that, we end up getting our renewal rates up, and there's our next revenue stream. And my super scientific definition on that one subsequent times this person bought this thing. So this would be time 2 through 100,000, right? Anytime they keep paying for the same thing, that's going to be renewal revenue. This could be less. It might downgrade at renewal, but if I pay something for the same thing again, that is a revenue dollar, or a renewal dollar, excuse me. And that's the least expensive revenue acquisition cost. This is the most efficient because I don't have to teach you anything. There's no overhead at all. You just pay again for the same thing for access for another year. Now, this is why at Success Coaching, we look at our business differently. We don't see our business as a renewal-based business. Like Gemma or Hyder, tell me, like, have you ever paid for the same education twice?
I mean, if I'm scaling a team, yeah, if I'm bringing in new hires.
I mean, for yourself, when you went to university, did you ever love a class so much that you were like, I'm going to pay for it and take it again?
Oh, no.
Yeah, no one does, right? Nobody buys the same education twice. And that, as an education company, we realize that. We're like, nobody, we've got 5 levels, but nobody's going to buy level 1 twice. Like you go through, you get level 1 certified, you're not going to come back and renew, which is very different than a SaaS product, right? Where I would renew because I need to continue solving that business problem, or you're one of our mission critical applications or whatever the case may be. I'll continue to pay that. But for training and education, we don't. So we look at it as anniversaries in our business, not renewals. So you took level 1 in January of last year. Now it's level 2, or I'm sorry, now it's January the next year. We're going to reach out and say, hey, do you want to go to level 2? And then level 3 and level 4. Like we'll move it through that way. So it's a little different, our business model, than most of the people who are on the call here today. But either way, this is the least expensive acquisition cost that any organization is ever going to have. I don't have to teach you anything new. It's the same stuff. You're just repaying to use it, and onward we go. All right, number 3. So there are 2 types of expansion revenue, and it drives me nuts in the industry. We use these interchangeably, but they're not. They're not interchangeable, and I'll show you why it matters. But they both make up expansion. There's upsell and there's cross-sell, and it matters one versus the other, and I'll show you why. Spoiler alert, it's got again to do with that overhead to the business. So let's start with upsell expansion revenue. And so where this one, I have it there. So the bottom of the funnel gets bigger, of course, and you've probably seen this. That's because we want our accounts to grow over time. That's ideal for us. We don't want to have to only generate revenue from the top of the funnel because it's so expensive. That net new revenue is the highest acquisition we have, MQLs, SQLs, etc. We want to be able to grow our current customer asset, and that's where NRR comes into play. And I'm sure most people are very aware of that. My definition of upsell expansion revenue is the same person or company buying more of the same stuff. So if I'm moving from 10 seats to 25 seats, that would be upsell. So I'm investing more in the same SKU or product or solution, however your business works, but that same person buying more of the same thing is what we consider upsell. And it could be due to an increase at renewal. If I raise my rates at renewal, you used to have to pay $100 for your licenses with us. And now this year, we went to $110. That $100 of the 110 is renewal dollars. That 10 is upsell. We were able to keep you as a customer, generating net new revenue, 10 extra dollars, on the exact same SKU or set of SKUs. Or it could just be that you used to have 10 seats, now you need 25 seats, and so it's the same product, same SKUs, you're using more of it. Anybody who's got a consumption model, upsell would be from 1 month to the next. If you're charging based on utilization and usage, as it goes up, that would go into your upsell dollar. This is the lower end of revenue acquisition cost. especially if it's due to the price increase. It might not be if you have to train people, and that's why I say or not. If I went from 10 people to 30 people or 30 seats, there's going to be 20 people I got to put through training. That's got overhead expense to it. And so from a revenue acquisition cost, I want to calculate that in as I look at that PHL or that profitability health level for that revenue stream. All right, revenue number 4, still sticking with expansion, is cross-sell. I've got that one tagged there, as you can see. Again, both are considered expansion. Both should be included in my net revenue retention number, my NRR number, but they both have different acquisition costs and overhead associated to them. So my super scientific definition there, buying other things. Same people still, but they bought a new SKU. This may or may not complement the first thing. It might go with it. It might be completely standalone. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we have middle tier revenue acquisition cost here, meaning we know we're going to have to train you on something new. Now, that being said, if you're a long-standing customer and I've built a relationship with you and you've renewed on this and everything's been hunky-dory, and now you buy this new thing and I got to teach you how to use that new thing, that's a lot less overhead than a completely net new customer or that net new revenue that we talked about when we've got to bring you from the top of the funnel to the bottom for the first time. And so it is more efficient in terms of revenue acquisition cost and overhead to our company than that net new still. But it is a little more than just upsell or renewal revenue because there is some training. There might be some ASINs involved, right? Configuration, implementation, integrations, all the ASINs. You might have to do all that stuff depending on the product and kind of what that looks like. And then number 5 brings us to the Holy Grail. And this is the number that as a customer success leader, when I was the head of CS a few times, this is what I focused on. And this is what I look at most from a CRO perspective at success coaching, because it is the Holy Grail of customer-driven revenue or growth. Advocacy. If I can make an advocate out of you and you go out and speak positively about me and you say, you know, they got a weird looking logo, but what that dude with the whiteboard said kind of made sense. You should go check out his website. The person that you're talking to is a referral lead. And notice how that referral lead comes in the middle of the funnel. I didn't have to do demand gen and awareness for this new lead. They were introduced to us by way of my advocate. My advocate did the marketing for me. I saved the MQL, and I have a vastly decreased acquisition cost that we'll look at in a second here. So my scientific definition on this one is when we have a new person or company buying a thing because the first person or company loved it and told them about it. When we can do that, we have now generated net new logos, net new business units, net new revenue at a significantly cheaper acquisition cost. And that is the Holy Grail, because we're generating net new business from what we call the customer asset outwards. So instead of just focusing up here like we've always done in the product era, we're focusing down here to generate net new leads up here, but coming through that side channel. And that will be the cheapest way we will ever be able to generate new logos and new customer acquisition. Okay, so why is it the Holy Grail? I'm going to move kind of quick through some of this, but it's a net new customer account logo or business unit that was generated directly from what we did at the bottom of the funnel. In other words, if that's my definition of success, my desired outcome plus my desired experience, if I'm willing to go out and advocate for you, you can guarantee I received whatever success was to me. I would not go out and speak positively about you to a referral lead and advocate for you if I wasn't getting my desired outcomes by way of my desired experience. And it's about 1/13 the cost of that net new revenue. So the MQLs, SQLs, and the typical, the revenue stream number 1 that we talked about, This costs 1/13 the expense. So now think of that in terms of when we get a little bit of money over time instead of a whole bunch of money up front. The risk is now offset significantly. That 3-to-1 ratio is completely different when we achieved the acquisition at 1/13 the expense to our business. And so we've offset this risk of operating in this subscription model quite significantly by generating those. And then the last concept here is customer success qualified leads, or CSQLs. This is starting to become more prevalent. People are starting to track these, and I'll show you how we track them at Success Coaching. But MQL has been around forever. SQL has been around forever. Now we've got CSQLs. And that's where we tie what we do back to revenue. If you want to carry a number, you want to be able to justify the overhead that you have to the business, or even better yet, show how you're actually a profit center. You're not an operating expense, but you're actually profitable. You've got to be able to track these CSQLs effectively. So the types of revenue that we at Success Coaching track towards our CSQL number, first off, renewal revenue. If you're going to renew, I can say that customer success had something to do with that. Not everything to do with it, right? It also means we had to sign a good fit customer. We had to onboard them effectively. We had to do a lot of stuff. It wasn't just customer success, but we as a holistic organization know that some of what went into them deciding to renew was in fact customer success driven, customer growth driven. And so we tack that one on. The next one, upsell expansion. If they're going to buy more of the same thing, we know that customer success had an impact on that. And again, to what ratio, it's going to depend on your business. If it's only CSMs that work with them in the post-sale world, then they had 100% of the impact. If the AMs are involved, or there's some professional services or some other parties involved, it might be a blend of what we all did to collectively make them successful and make them want to buy more. If they want to buy other things, that's another aspect that should go into your CSQL number through the cross-sell expansion number. And then finally, advocate referral. If we generate net new leads through advocacy channels, we know without a shadow of a doubt that was a CSQL. That was a customer success driven lead into our funnel. And so what we want to do, I think most people probably know who Bob Ross is. I want to paint the revenue picture, and that's what CS leaders struggle to do oftentimes.
We have a lot of people who are going to be listening back to this from Europe who might not know
who Bob Ross is. Well, Bob Ross is a very famous painter here in the United States. He had a public broadcasting television show for decades, and famously was coined the quote, "No mistakes, only happy accidents." There's a movie out there about him on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. But he was a very famous painter. And that's what we want to do, is paint the revenue picture as a CS leader or even a CSM. If I want to be able to tie back my activity to the almighty dollar, this is what it would look like as we go ahead and do this. A complete picture should include everything. So here are some real world examples from this anniversary concept at Success Coaching. Like I said, most people don't buy the same training more than one time. And so we don't really have a repeatable revenue business model like a SaaS product would. So we have anniversaries instead, because maybe you don't want the same education, but if it's been a year since you learned something, probably time to take another class and continue your education. So we gauge our profitability health level and then our CSQL attributions accordingly based on that. So in our HubSpot is our CRM. We have different deal types to drop down on our deals. In most CRMs, you're going to have something like that. And we have a net new customer prospect. So this is someone who we've never worked with before, either inbound or outbound, but the deal type is a net new customer. And then we also have former customers, because people take time off from education, and we don't we don't think of that as like a churn per se, because you might take a class this year and then you're going to take a year off and implement and kind of iterate what you learned, and then you come back a year later. We would just look at that as kind of a delayed anniversary, if you will. And so former customer returning prospect is a very common deal type that we get. Hey, I worked with you 2 years ago. I'd like to talk to you about can you do for my team today, etc. We also have the anniversary deals. So every time we sign a net new deal, we create a corresponding anniversary deal for 1 year later in HubSpot. And Jen and Angelica and our CS team track those and lead up. And as we lead up to those, they use those to figure out what do you want to do. It could be a full-on anniversary, which would be the same SKUs like a renewal. It could be an upgrade. So that would be like moving from level 1 to level 2, because they typically cost more as you move up in level. Could be a downgrade. We see that sometimes. You had, level 2, and now you just got new staff and you just need level 1. So we've got some downgrades at anniversaries as well. We've got mid-contract deals. So in the middle of our contract, and this is where we generate the vast majority of our revenue, is actually mid-contract expansions. So on Success Coaching, you get 1 year of access to our online learning management system. And with, typically speaking, before that year is up, they've gotten certified on whatever they bought. So they bought level 1, 3 months later, they've gotten certified. And they've still got 9 months left until they lose their access to that, but they're interested enough to move on to level 2 before the anniversary comes up. That's what a mid-contract expansion would look like. So they're buying more seats, same SKUs. So, and that's the other thing. We have clients with hundreds and thousands of CSMs. They're all on our platform. None of them started with thousands of CSMs on our platform, right? Everybody starts with like a trial. I'm going to put 10 to 15 people on, and then we'll expand out. And next thing we know, a year later, we've got 750 CSMs on our platform, whatever. So that's what this looks like in terms of this expansion where they're buying more. All right, the pilot went well. We're ready to expand out. Typical land and expand that most SaaS companies would have. And then we also have upgrades mid-contract. That's where they want to move from level 1 to level 2, and it hasn't even been a year yet, but they want to continue their education and keep moving through the business. And so for that one, we look at that as cross-sell, and the one above we refer to as our upsell. And then last but not least, and this is where most companies struggle, and I have people tell me this is impossible. I'm like, I don't know if it is, because we do it. And if we can do it, we're a pretty scrappy kind of startup-y company. Like most big companies should be able to do it too. But I mean, whatever. I have debates with people all the time around this, but lead sources. How can you track lead sources? How will we ever know how they ever came to us? If you don't know how a lead ended up in your funnel, you're missing something in your qualification process. Your sales team, your SDRs, whoever has that initial interaction with them, even the product itself, if it's a total tech touch model and it's like a free trial, you should have some way when they're signing up a mandatory field of how they found you, so that you can start to lean into the ones that are working and start to right size kind of how you go to market, et cetera. And so what we do is we track that in lead source, and we've got inbound, right? Contact us, chat, website, found us on Google, whatever the case may be. We've got outbound, where we're leveraging various strategies right now for that. Outbound is brutal. If anybody's ever been in sales, I mean, oh man, it is an uphill slog to do outbound. But we're getting better at it. It's taking some time, but so this is phone calls, literally phone calls, emails, like cold calls, like just straight up outbound. Hey, we got a funny logo, but our education and certs kick butt, I'll say. There we go. I edited myself. So you should come check it out. Anniversary, that's another lead source. So that's the anniversary deal. Again, when I close a net new deal, we've got the corresponding anniversary deal immediately created. And so that would have its own lead source. The only reason that deal is in there is because it's a year after the last time they bought something. And that then sets our sales process in motion. Mid-contract expansion for those upsells and cross-sells that I just talked about. And then we get this one as well. Our business is a little interesting because we are not just B2B. We are also direct to consumer. So we have what we call solo subscriptions, meaning one person can go to our website and buy a certification or access for themselves. And they're a solo standalone learner, and it's all self-paced, all tech touch, all online, credit cards only, just all on the website, direct to consumer. Sometimes people will do that. They'll love it. They'll then go tell their boss, hey, I think the whole team should go through this. And then that converts into a team deal where we have the entire organization on it. So we've got both sides of our business. So that is a lead source. Conference connection today, probably, I don't know, maybe today, maybe I'll say something. Somebody's like, hey, I want to talk to you about education. But when we meet people at conferences, that's another lead source. And then finally, the referred by. All of the ones that you see there with an asterisk are included in our CSQL number. Inbound, outbound is not, but anniversary, mid-contract, solo, and referred by all go into our CSQL number, because we believe if they're going to renew at the anniversary or upgrade, etc., customer success had a lot to do with that. So that's going to go into our CSQL number. If they're going to expand mid-contract, customer success is doing something right, so that goes into our CSQL number. If they were a solo subscription before, they had a pleasant enough experience that they wanted to bring the whole team on, customer success had something to do with that. And then if they would go and refer us, that's that advocate referral revenue. That's the one, the holy grail, if you will. And so here's what our 2023 revenue looked like in terms of different deal types. This is real data in terms of percentages. And you can see that is the net new number. It's 30%. Very kind of tough to see. It's kind of small. That is everything else. So at Success Coaching, I know 70 out of $100 that we generate in our top line revenue is directly related to our CSQL and our customer success program. 30% is net new and just more of a sales function. There's a place to connect if anybody'd like to. I'd love to continue the conversation. Go ahead and hit the QR code. That's my my LinkedIn. You can go to successcoaching.co to learn more about our certs and education. You can also go to redslacks.com, all free content. Anytime I do a public speaking thing, I publish it there. So you can check that out. Articles, webinars, podcasts, it's all on there. Please encourage you to check that out. And if there's anything I can do for anyone, don't hesitate to reach out. Again, passionate about helping people get into and be successful within this industry.